Everybody's trying to steal from everybody else. In other words, in modern days, you get lobbyists, special interests, others whose purpose is it to help the country, to promote freedom, representative government, constitutionalism, private property rights, whose purpose is to get laws made, regulations in place, to make them rich or to make them wealthier at the expense of somebody else. The Law, the name of the book, is really a series of essays. Woe to the nation when this latter purpose, that is, I want to get involved to get my share, prevails among the mass victims of lawful plunder when they, in turn, seize the power to make the laws. Isn't that pretty much what we have in Congress today? 100%. Jefferson talked about the tyranny of the legislature because he knew that when a legislature becomes, in effect, a lawful power that can pass bills for the purpose of plunder, it's over. You can have tyranny by a strong man, you can have tyranny by a legislature, you can have tyranny by millions, a mob. Your Constitution was written, adopted, and ratified to prevent that, to prevent the centralized police power with a strong man, a monarchy of sorts, a dictatorship, a fascist regime, and to stop the mob from determining whether you get to keep your unalienable rights. That's how brilliant they were. Right now what we're facing is both. Because Marxism is the most evil of isms, because Marx, and before him truly Hegel, he stole from Hegel, both of whom were German, by the way, the idea that you wrap yourself, camouflage your agenda in populism, in the name of the people, in equality. That is, the proletariat overthrowing the bourgeoisie. You create the jealousies, you create the anger, we want our share, they've stolen their money, they've taken too much out of the economy. You hear it today with Bernie Sanders, but not just him, throughout the economy, which is why von Mises has said, we're all Marxists now. We may not believe it, we may not know it, but we think like a Marxist and we talk like a Marxist. Marx figured out how to popularize tyranny. Hegel figured out how to popularize tyranny. Rousseau figured, these are the big three as far as I'm concerned. Rousseau figured out how to popularize tyranny. If you want a thumbnail sketch on all this, you go to Rediscovering Americanism, which lays it all out. But out of that, to have such brilliant men as the founders of this country, who after the American Revolution, they could have become the modern day Politburo. They could have grabbed all the power. George Washington could have been king. It would have happened. But they didn't do it. What do you think Joe Biden would do? He'd grab as much power as he could. Until that happens, woe to the nation when the latter purpose prevails among the mass victims of lawful plunder, when they, in turn, seize the power to make the laws. Until that happens, the few practice lawful plunder upon the many. So he's talking about the few practicing lawful plunder on the many, and he said the country's over when the many practice lawful plunder against the many. See? A common practice where the right to participate in the making of law is limited to a few persons. But then participation in the making of the law becomes universal. And then men seek to balance their conflicting interests by universal plunder. Everybody's trying to steal from everybody else. In other words, in modern days, you get lobbyists, special interests, others whose purpose is it to help the country, to promote freedom, representative government, constitutionalism, private property rights, whose purpose is to get laws made, regulations in place, to make them rich or to make them wealthier at the expense of somebody else. To go to the bureaucracies and try and regulate your competitors out of business. To go to Congress and have them pass laws to force people to, for instance, buy electric vehicles. So certain people get rich, certain people go broke. Now, the government, in whatever form, is the mediator on who gets what. And most of the time, it's going to be, quote unquote, the mob. Because you still go through the election process. Yet the bigger the bureaucracy gets, the more centralized it gets, the more powerful Washington gets vis-a-vis the individual, vis-a-vis towns, vis-a-vis the states, the less your vote matters. We're talking about the permanent government. Donald Trump talks about the swamp. Those of us who are more bookworms, we call it about the administrative state. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about the administrative state. He basically said that's not the only but the main weakness of the American system. That is, the administrative state trying to reach into every village, every township, every county, every city, every state. But he said America is so diverse. He didn't mean racially or sexually, geographically. That America is so diverse with so many towns, so many communities, so many neighborhoods, numerous states, that America will be able to withstand it. But he was wrong. We're not withstanding it. We're losing. We're losing to it. It's devouring our communities. He said, and then men seek to balance their conflicting interests by universal plunder. Instead of rooting out the injustices found in society, they make these injustices general. It's generalized. You can't even hold anyone to account. You're not even sure who's doing it, but you're participating in it. It's either go along to get along or to get trampled. And that's when he says that's when it's over. As soon as the plundered classes gain political power, they establish a system of reprisals against other classes. They do not abolish legal plunder. This is so on point. This objective would demand more enlightenment than they possess. Instead, they emulate their evil predecessors by participating in this legal plunder, even though it is against their own interests, ultimately saying you're destroying yourself. You're destroying your family, you're destroying your communities, you're destroying your country. Because it can't go on forever. Socialism can't go on forever. Communism is a despotic outcome of socialism. It is as if it were necessary before a reign of justice appears for everyone to suffer a cruel retribution, some for their evilness, some for their lack of understanding. So what he's saying there is, it's as if everybody has to become impoverished and destitute and punished before there's a chance to eventually turn it around. Because this is a cycle. It's like a hamster wheel. You can't get off it. You just keep going round and round and round. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse. You get used to it. And that's when he says it's over.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.